Welcome to the Healthy Perspective Podcast with your host, chiropractor, entrepreneur, mentor, and author, Dr. Chris Bowman. He'll break down and extract the secret sauce behind his own success and the success of some of the top leaders in every category and from around the world. Get ready for your weekly mental adjustment because shift is going to happen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Perspective Podcast. This is going to be a special one. I am super excited to bring you this interview. For those of you that know me, that are local to our Murrieta, Temecula area, will know I'm a chiropractor, but not just any chiropractor. I focus in special needs families, whether that's cerebral palsy, stroke, genetic disorders, all the way to neurodevelopmental disorders, from the lightest ADHD, ADD, OCD, all the way to severe autism spectrum. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of parents and get some unique insights that unless you have a kid or have autism or a neurodevelopmental disorder or challenge yourself, you just can't get that insight. And so I'm really excited. Today, we're going to be talking with Becca Lory Hector, someone that's diagnosed with autism, not someone that lets autism define her, but it's their superpower that allows her to really, that's been able to launch her into the levels of success and is bringing an awareness to what it's like to other people that might be living in the same, the same box of neurotypical expectations, when really, when you have a neurodevelopmental challenge, it's just different. And so, Becca, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to interview and I can't wait to hear more.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't you just review a little bit of your story? You know, I read it on your website. I think it's super powerful, and then we'll just kind of launch our conversation from there.
Okay, great. So at this moment, as I talk to you, I am just about to turn 46. So about 10 years ago, it is almost, which is crazy to me. When I turned 36, I got my autism diagnosis. Okay. So I was almost 4 decades on this planet living as a human being before I got my diagnosis. And so a lot of life happened before that. Yeah. And what had happened is a lot of struggle and a lot of strife and what I now understand to be a lot of trauma. Right. And by the time I got to the place of 35, I was already a couple of years homebound. I was in full suicidal depression. Wow. I was not leaving the house. I had done 15 different jobs in the last 13 years prior to that. I couldn't make any of them work. Nobody could figure out why. Like, it was just this mystery. There had been a thing, we used to call it the thing, right? Like in my house, that we knew was different about me and that we knew what it was. And we were constantly seeking, you know, what is this? How can I get help for this? And trying all the different labels and all the different medications. And, you know, looking for this thing. And it wasn't until, you know, I crashed and burned, and we call it burnout in the autism community for adults. And the tendency is for adults pre-diagnosis to have at least 1 or 2 burnouts, and post-diagnosis, we have them as well. But without a diagnosis, they're almost a guarantee. Wow. And that's where I was at. It is my opinion now that I should have been hospitalized. At the time, that wasn't the choice that my mom made. And so I was there, you know, really for years, and I had no expectation that it would end. And what ended up happening is just by pure chance, and because, you know, Wikipedia is Wikipedia and you get stuck in there, right? I was looking for, I had migraines my entire life, and they had changed, like the preceptors to the migraines had changed. And that was always a warning sign of a brain tumor, they said. And so, you know, it was right on Wikipedia because I was a homebound person. I wasn't going to the doctor to ask for help. I didn't talk to anybody. And so I started on WebMD, but that was too technical. And so I got on Wikipedia and went down the vortex. And in that vortex, I found sensory processing disorder, which rang so true for me that I couldn't believe something like it existed and I'd never heard of it. And at the bottom of that was the term that we used at the time, which is Asperger's syndrome. And I clicked on that, and that was like reading my own biography. Wow. It was really scary. And so non-biased opinion as a scientific, logical person, sent the article to my mom via email, said nothing, wrote nothing in the email, just the link. A couple of days later in mom time, she checked her email, she went and read it and came in and said, "Oh my God, you found the thing. Where do you want to go to take care of it?" right? And that's how autism came into my life. Up until then, as a child raised in the 80s, autism was a very specific thing. It only happened to white boys who were behavioral problems in the classroom or were non-speaking. And so I did not fit any of those profiles.
And it was like 1 in 10,000. Like it wasn't something that was a household name.
No, of course not. And it wasn't something we talked about, right? We, at that time, especially in New York City, we housed our special needs kids in a separate building. They had gates on their windows. They took separate buses. We weren't supposed to talk to them or touch them, right? I mean, that was the atmosphere. And so I couldn't, as a person, be any further away from that picture of someone with special needs. And so I was everything else but that. And so when it came into my life, it was a big awakening. And I say, like, I lived a life and then I got my autism diagnosis and now I'm living a second life. Like I have like a whole do-over situation.
Yeah. You know, this is a really helpful and interesting conversation for me, because as a chiropractor, I live life from a different philosophy from medicine. Different, not one is better, one is worse. They both have their times. I come from the philosophy that diagnoses are labels, which oftentimes enclose people, cage people, imprison people to think that I can't do this because of my whatever label that you want to give them. It's an excuse for medications that will neutralize them. And kind of the reason why I got into the work that I'm doing is one of my mentors said from stage, I can't imagine how frightening it must be to be locked outside of a world that you want to be a part of. And it's interesting coming, because the conversation with you, it's completely flipped. That you were locked out until somebody helped you understand what's going on. And then once you understood what was going on and you had this, you know, kind of encouragement that I am different and that's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm worse. It means that I have to live my life differently than the typical expectation.
And that wasn't the first awakening though, right? So because my whole life I knew I was different, right? And the real difference between diagnosis and no diagnosis is that isolation, right? There's this idea when you are undiagnosed, you're floating around thinking you're the only one like you. And no one understands what the heck it is you're saying or talking about. There's no words for what's going on for you. You can't describe it. So you end up faking your way through the world, trying to be what everyone else wants you to be. And who you are gets forgotten entirely, right? And there's just a little tiny seed left of you isolated in there, right? And what happens with the diagnosis is this realization that I'm not alone. And there are names for the things that I'm struggling with. And there are choices I could be making differently. And so it's like, I lived my life making uninformed choices. I was making educated guesses about my life all the time. And with the diagnosis came information that I could now make informed choices, which meant better choices, right? And all of those things. And so a lot of the struggles I was having in employment and relationships and all of that came from this communication divide, because I didn't have words to talk about what was happening for me, right? And so we talk about that social communication issue between autistics and non-autistics. And really what it is that it's a different language that we're speaking. And so we learn to translate for neurotypicals and into neurotypical, but the reverse never happens, right? So it's like, you know, imagine that you're a deaf person and you have to walk around in the world pretending to be hearing. I mean, that's terrible, right? Imagine all the stuff you're missing out on.
Right.
And that's what was happening for me.
Now, when you are, you know, let's say like meeting somebody new or getting into a relationship or new levels of employment or, you know, those sort of things, what type of language do you use to communicate? Is it just, in a sense, setting a different, not better, not worse set of expectations? Or what can people, in a sense, because I think a lot of people are just kind of just shocked, like, you know, don't want to offend, don't want to put down, but then again, don't want to, like, you know what I mean?
Right,
like,
exactly.
How can you help people that have good hearts, that want to understand and help, but are just kind of toolless in this world?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is, remember, no matter who you're talking to, whatever their difference is, they're a human being underneath all of that, right? So I'm a human and I'm an autistic human and I'm a female human and I have green eyes. And these are just things about me, right? But at the base of it all, I'm a human being just like anybody else. And so you want to treat that person with the same amount of empathy, understanding, the same amount of desire to understand, right? As you would any other human being in your life. right? And if you're not doing that with the other human beings in your life, you have a bigger problem than I can help you with. Okay. So, that's really the under of it all. And if you're unsure, say you're unsure. I don't know if this is the right thing to say. I don't mean to offend you. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? All the things that we would do in any other situation, right? And so much like asking people their pronouns is becoming kind of the way we have conversations now, right? I think we will get into a phase where we talk about neurology in the same way. Yeah. Right now, the world isn't that safe for it. And I want to be honest about that. The world isn't ready for autistics in all of their autismness yet. Yeah.
I love that word.
And that is especially the case in employment.
Yeah.
And so in terms of disclosure in the workplace, I, as a professional, don't recommend it. What I recommend is thinking about that workplace for yourself, making sure, and you do all your homework on your end, that you're ending up in the right place.
Yeah.
And when you get there, to ask for human accommodations that can help you, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm a little forgetful. It helps me to have things in writing. Right? We can ask for the things that we need without saying, I'm autistic, so here are the legal accommodations that I need.
Right.
We want to save that card for if we get denied the accommodations that we need. Until then, it's really not important and none of anybody's business to share that with them. It doesn't, unless it affects your employment, right? Otherwise, it's not your employer's business. And that's the way that I treat it. In terms of advice for other people. In personal relationships, I think it's the opposite. If all personal relationships are built on trust, if you begin a relationship with a lie or a lie by omission, you are not starting a healthy relationship at all. So in terms of family, in terms of friends, and in terms of romantic relationships, I feel like that's got to be one of your beginning steps in there. Because, if that's a relationship you really want to build on and you're expecting that person to trust you, but also you want to trust them, it begins with truth and honesty. And so that's how I see that. In terms of myself, different question. I am out there and all over the place on the internet. I cannot hide from my diagnosis, and I've put myself in that position where I want to educate.
Yeah.
So I walk out the door, and if someone asks me an autism question, I have to, whether or not I want to, say, okay, here's the truth of what that answer is, right?
Yeah.
Because that's my job, and that's the position I put myself in.
Well, thank you for pioneering that and being that person, because it's not an easy position. It's not an easy thing, because like you said, like autism is a small part of what makes you, but it's become this kind of like filter of nothing gets to you without the filter of, oh, what do you think?
And I think that's true for everyone with autism. I mean, if we think about it, right? I can't do anything without my autism. I mean, my brain is part of every single thing that I do. It's not like I'm missing an arm, and sometimes that's inconvenient, right? Yeah. If I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming through an autism brain. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, that is so much a part of me, and it's a part of every autistic person, just like if somebody's LGBTQIA, right? It's such an intrinsic part of your identity that it is with you all the time. Whether or not you choose to include it any bigger than that in your life is up to you. I have swallowed it whole.
Sure.
And that's my baggage. And so I'm always running from autism because I'm like, I got to take care of little a autism today. Like, me needs care, But it is that piece. And what it is about learning how to accept that that's how your brain works and understand your own personal brand of autism.
Yeah.
It's all different.
Yeah. I think you are coming from a place of abundance with your diagnosis and how you've lived your life and how you plan on continuing to live your life. What I've seen, unfortunately, and maybe it's a phase that you also went through, but people receive a diagnosis or are finally able to accept, like, I am different. There's something different about me. And instead of coming from a place of, now I understand, here's how I can bring value as me, instead of trying to act like other people, it's in a sense like, I am due now favor and specialness and this and that. Like, I love how you talked about, like, with your employer, like, you're not playing that card right away, expecting your employer to do everything to help you to be successful. Because ultimately, as an employee, your job is to make the employer successful. Like, it's all about a synergistic relationship. Obviously, it can't be a parasitic one. But I think I've seen a lot of people come from a place of maybe anger, maybe it's like, I'm special, so I deserve this, everything about me.
No, and I think we all go through that phase. I went through an angry phase. I think the first year or two that you get your diagnosis needs to be a really selfish time. You need to be going weekly, if not bi-weekly, to a therapist just to walk it through. I mean, I got my diagnosis at 36. I spent those first 2 years looking back at the first 36 years of my life going, was this autism? Was that autism? Did I really screw this up? Or was that somebody not understanding my autism? Was that me? Was that me? Was that me? Because my whole life, it was always my fault. And so when I got the autism, it was like unpacking, maybe that wasn't my fault there. There were adults in my life that should have done something about that, and all of these other things. And with that look back, there's anger, right? You're angry that nobody helped little you. Like, how? You were all adults. You told me to trust you. That was your job, right? And I did all the hoops you told me to, and you were still wrong. Right. So there is anger. I still have anger behind that. Right. As a kid, you're mad that you couldn't protect your little self better. Right. And you're mad at the grownups around you that didn't help you when they should have. Right. And you're mad for the life you could have lived. Right. I could have lived a totally different life. I don't know what that life would have been. And there's anger with that. But everyone processes through that, right? Because there's life after the anger. It keeps going. It doesn't stop knocking on your door. Good morning. Nope, the next day's there. And at a certain point, you have to decide, do you want to live an angry life for the rest of your life? Or do you not want to do that? Yeah. Right. There's forks in the road all the time. Right. And when those choices come, that's when it's on that person. Right. And then they just become an angry human. Right. And angry humans are out there, and we just go, sorry, you're an angry human. And I'm sorry you're choosing to live your life that way.
Right. Now, you have a course that you created and that you're going live with soon. If I were to guess, your course probably focuses on something like this. Like, here's how you transition from living a life about yourself, to understanding yourself, being okay with yourself, and stepping into greatness. Can you talk a little bit about your course, who it's for, who it can help, and maybe how you even created it?
Yeah, I mean, so the creation of it is real simple. The creation of it is what I walked through, right? So I've been walking this walk for 10 years almost. And my first 2 years were angry, and I did the therapy, and I got myself back into work. And in therapy, I found mindfulness. And that was something that was a concept that was sort of an outlier to me before diagnosis, but it super resonated in diagnosis, right? It was like, oh shit, you're right. All I do is worry about all the mistakes I made in the past. And all I do is worry about prepping for tomorrow and the next day and the anxiety of all of that, right? And I don't spend any time here. I'm never in the moment. I have no idea what my body needs on a regular basis because I'm not looking there. I don't pay attention. I learned that for my survival, I needed to be in those two spaces. I needed to learn from the past so I didn't do it again, and I could fool everybody better. And I needed to prep as best as I could for the future, because that's how I got through things, was by being prepared, over prepared, right? And I needed to let that go. And I found in mindfulness this way to like recapture my life, because your life is those moments, right? Just our life is right now. You and I are having this conversation for the two of us. Nothing else is happening right now. We're in this, and that's it, right? And I wasn't enjoying the conversations. I wasn't having joy or fun, or even knew what fun and joy was as an adult, right? I didn't know that. And so I went through a journey. And for me, that went from mindfulness into the world of personal development, which used to be self-help, right? And I read The Secret, and I read the 4 Agreements and all the ones after that. And as an autistic person, I can't help but find patterns. And I found patterns in those books. They all put different stories around and different pretty words around the lessons, but all the lessons were the same for the most part. There'd be a few that were different for each person, but there was like a core in there. And I was like, well, this is what we need as autistics. We don't want your fancy language. We don't need all your extra stuff. We're not even meat and potato people. We just want the meat. We don't even want your potatoes. And so in a lot of those courses and in a lot of those books, there's a lot of storytelling before you get to the skill sets. And autistics don't make it through the storytelling. We're like, that's nice. What are you trying to tell me? And that's what I did. I created a course of the things that I did in the order that I did them in order to build the life that I have now, which looks so different than the life that I was living when I got a diagnosis. I'm a homeowner. I run 2 businesses. Okay. I'm also a vet tech. during the day sometimes.
In your spare time.
I am a parent of many animals and not a parent of children. And I have moved from New York City to Colorado in the mountains all by myself, so like with me and my husband. I got married at 42 because now I knew myself, right? I mean, there were a lot of things that happened because I did that work. And I know that if I set it up in a way that's digestible for the autistic brain, other autistic adults out there can do it. And that's who it's for. It's for the rest of the late diagnosed people. It's for the adult autistics that never got taught adulting, right? It's for, those people, so you can get out of survival mode and into a thriving life that feels like your own. That's the goal, right? And that's what I put together in the course for people. So this is like my 10th or gazillionth run, it feels like, of the course, but I run it live twice a year, and then it's available via recording the rest of the year. But it's a way out in a void of nothing. We don't have adult autistic services, period. Mm-hmm. You get your diagnosis, congratulations on spending $6,000, and that's it. Sometimes you can ask for accommodations and get them, but there's really nothing else. We don't have a support system out there. So I created something in a void of nothing. That's not to say it's the best thing. It's just a little piece and a seed to say we can create our own supports. We don't need to wait for research. We don't need to wait for funding. We don't need to wait. We can do it for ourselves, just like we've always done it in our community. And that's all it is out there. Yeah.
I love that. And I've always said, you can ask my staff, you can ask my wife, being in this work now for 6 years, empowering, equipping, helping kids on the spectrum or with neurodevelopmental challenges live life to their optimal potential and in optimal health, and helping the parents, look through life differently. I've always said the autistic community isn't here as a disadvantage or a problem the world has to solve. In my opinion, the autistic community is here to actually change the world and help it, rebirth into something new.
Well, we are a very, very, very obvious patch of difference. And we live in a world in which sameness is just revered, right? And so I think we're another group of people right behind, the race wars, and right behind LGBTQ community. We're the next group. We are literally following in their footsteps. It's almost identical historically, right? And we're moving in a space now from being an autism community to an autistic culture, right? And when we get to that space of autistic culture, we know that we're starting to switch the world into loving difference, into understanding difference, into knowing the benefits of difference. Right.
Because that's what it's about.
That's all it is. Perspective taking.
Yeah. And I don't know if you said that on purpose, but I have a book coming out next month called Perspective.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's called Perspective, Rewire Your Brain for Success and Abundance. And it's so interesting reading your story on your website. And it's just like, it's almost like, have you read this already? And but that's not the first time that and I'm not like going to all these places and rewriting, everything that Tony Robbins, all these other people are writing. These are things that like I have learned and I'm now just sharing my story. But I think it's time that people embrace perspective differences, like the way other people see the world is valuable. Different is actually helpful, not just like, okay, you do things that way, I do things this way, let's go as fast as possible. But like, let's do things together as much as possible, because then we can actually go further.
And that's that. It's a huge social shift that we're asking, right? Because we have really defined ourselves by what we do for a living and how much money we make, right? There's all these things, and we've cut, and in order to make the most money, we've cut a lot of people out of things and groups that are different, right? That's the way to get the power, the way to the money. And what we're saying now is, as a group, as a social group, especially the generations behind me, they're asking for social responsibility out of the companies that they're buying things from, which is not something we've ever asked our companies for before, right? And that's the beginning of the shift. Now they have to think about diversity and inclusion when they're hiring. Now they have to think about, and we're slowly making that. And if you don't keep writing your book, and I don't keep teaching my course, and we don't keep repeating the same thing using different words, we're not going to get to everybody. Like, I needed to hear it from somebody who said it the way I needed to hear it. And I didn't know who that was going to be or when that was going to happen. For me, it was Brene Brown, right? And she said it for me the way I needed to hear it. I hope I'm that person for somebody else. And I hope your book is that book for somebody else, because you're going to say it different than I say it.
Yep.
Right. But we're saying the same thing. And that's all that we know the truth. We have all these truths. Just pay attention. Right.
Yeah.
You just got to listen now.
Yeah. Now, last kind of couple questions or so, let's say people are listening and being like, you're the first person that I've heard that's living, I don't really know how to describe, but it's living a relatively normal life, like that's not stuck in just an autism bubble where everything is given to you and like, you know what I mean? Like you're actually providing value to the world instead of, in a sense, just taking. Are there other people diagnosed with autism, as adults that have been able to, in a sense, break out of the shell of like, I'm diagnosed with autism, I can't do anything,
right?
But because I'm autistic.
That mental shift has to happen because you have influences on the outside making you feel that way, right? As young children, we are growing up and whatever, right? We're like sponges for the world around us. And what happened for me when I grew up, I was a sponge, right? And everyone told me being different is bad. And I learned that and I hid that and all that stuff. But what we're finding now is a lot of more people like me who are willing to be vocal and visible and own their shit. Right? Own their stuff, be authentic, all of that stuff, right? And when we see that in anybody, that should inspire us to be authentic, right? And again, I think that's a societal shift that we'll be seeing more of. What happened for us as an autism community is that the rest of the world figured out that computers were fun. And the rest of the world figured out that you could have friends online. And the rest of the world figured out you could date people online and all of this other stuff, and normalized the stuff that the autism community was already doing. And because of that, money was put in and it blew up. We got Facebook, we got this. And with that, the autism community was given a voice, because many of us are homebound, not by choice, or not employed, not by choice, right? But because of, the hurdles, the ableist hurdles that are out there for people to jump in order to get a job, right? And all of that stuff. With COVID, we got an evener playing field. What? Remote work became okay. Now I can work from home without people judging me, which I've been doing for the last 5 years, right? Pre-COVID. But now it's a reasonable way to be employed, not a lazy person's way to be employed, right? And so as we're evening the playing field in all of these different ways, and the autistic voice is growing, I think we're going to see more of me. Right? More of people that are, I'm autistic. So what? I'm doing this, the other thing. Watch me, right? Because I wasted almost 40 years on this planet doing nothing, suffering, being angry, being traumatized. And I'm not wasting whatever I got left. So move over is sort of what happened. And it's what's happening for the autism community. I can be a CEO in my pajamas from my house and still make money. Right? And that eliminates having to care what I'm wearing, whether I'm uncomfortable, did I wear makeup, blah, 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 right? And my production doubles. So stay out of my way, right? And that's what it is. It's about showing and doing and not talking anymore.
Yeah. I love that, Becca. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about you, find out if they want to sign up for your course and all of that?
I put everything on my website because I need to find it easily myself. Okay. So everything is at Becca Lory, LOY.com. There's little tabbies. You'll be able to find the course, my seminar series, my writing, if you want to read it. And of course, my social stuff is all on there.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been an enlightening conversation. We might have to bring you back for another one here in a couple months.
I'd be happy.
I'm stoked for you. I'm excited for you. I'm proud of you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Perspective Podcast. To connect with Dr. Bowman, follow him on Instagram at Dr. Chris Bowman. Until next time, make shift happen.